Hello everyone, welcome back to day one of the 7-day cybersecurity bootcamp. I'm glad you chose to come back. Today we're going to cover passwords. Passwords are something that everybody has a lot of. They're not as simple as you think they are, and they pose a very serious risk if not done correctly. So stay tuned and we're going to go through step by step everything you need to know about passwords. So at the end of the day today you should be a lot better off than you are now. We start out with any battle or any challenge we face with a little bit of reconnaissance. In reconnaissance, you've got to figure out where you're at right now, set a baseline, and where you need to be. What is your destination, your goal? How do you define victory? Well, you got to define it, so set that up now. George S. Patton said that a good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan executed next week. What that means to me is that if you got a plan that's decent today, execute it now. Let's get it done, get it in place, and start moving forward. Don't take the time to figure out all the ifs and ands and gotchas and just do it today. Follow along for 7 days and you're going to be a lot better off and you'll be thankful you did. The first thing I want you to do is download this form if you haven't already. Pause me, start me back up when you've got it. Download, print this form out. On this form are 12 blocks. Of those are 11 blocks that you can put a check mark in if you are actually doing it. What I mean is, if you look at the top left block, it says security assessment. If you're doing security assessments, if you're already done with your network, put a check mark in there. Example next to it is spam email. If you already have a spam system in place, put a check mark in there. And what I've done, if you look here on my screen, is I've done what I figure is an average company that we see every day. We talk to these companies, we interview them, we help them with their cybersecurity, and we ask if they take an initial assessment as part of the plan. And what we find is this. If you look at this one here, it's maybe hard to see, but under the ones I'm talking about, there'll be a green check mark that they put in here, and also they put a number next to it. So start out by putting a check mark in any box that you are currently doing. If you have a spam email system, put a check mark in it. If you have good passwords, put a check mark in them. If you have security awareness training, put a check mark in it. This company here, example, they gave, and then at this point when you're done with that, the way this assessment works is write a number between 1 and 10 in that same box. 1 being very weak and 10 being you've got it, you're a rock star, you're killing it, and you don't need to focus on those on that day. But I think you will still want to focus on that day, but you've got it down. So then we're going to score these. So example, this company here on spam email, they did pretty good. They got a 6 above average, which means they have a spam filter. They get a little bit of spam. They may get some virus in their email, but they're doing a pretty good job. Their password, they must have some good policies in place because they give themselves an 8. That's pretty darn good for passwords. Security assessment, security awareness, that means that they train their employees. They must mention it casually when they hire people that you have a security plan in place, but they must not enforce it or they'd have higher than a 4. That's okay, we can fix it. They don't have any advanced endpoint protection. They're not doing any kind of multi-factor authentication. Computer updates are getting done about half the time. They gave themselves a 5. Dark web doesn't exist for them. We'll talk about the importance of that soon. Firewall, they're doing pretty well. They have an 8 out of 10, which means that their firewall is actively working, filtering out bad stuff, and also blocking incoming traffic that doesn't need to be there. They have no encryption in place, but they have a backup system. And their backup, they're not quite sure about. It's a 4, which means they have a system. It's probably functioning, but they don't do daily due diligence to verify it, confirm it, and it may not check for ransomware. And that's probably why they gave it a 4. When we're done, after you do that, you want to figure out what you scored. The total points possible is 110 on this score. If you add up all the boxes that you checked and the numbers, we came up with a 31. Well, what is a 31 really? You think about 31%. If you were to take home a 31% from when you were in high school, what would you get? Probably in a lot of trouble. I would have. But that's an F, a failure. But that's okay. This is a starting point. I'm asking that you be honest about this because we're going to figure out how to get you from a 30% to a 60 to 70% in a short amount of time. We're not going to ask you to get to 100%. I don't think it's really feasible at this point because if you have a low score now, getting to that point is very tough. It takes a systematic approach over a long period of time to truly get you to 100%. We're going to improve you from where you are today. If you double this score, I'd be happy with that during the first pass. And we can come back and do a little better next time and get each time we do it a little stronger. So stay tuned. And we're going to learn more about passwords. I feel that passwords are like underpants. Yeah, I know, strange, huh? But you should change them often. You should keep them very private and never share them with anyone. Think about that. If you're doing all those three things with your passwords, then you're probably pretty well off right now. You're not having a lot of struggles with that. Why do we worry about passwords? Because passwords are leaked every day. There's cyber breaches and data hacks that happen almost every day. You can't read the newspaper, turn on the TV, or use the internet without seeing that some other company got breached. Whether it's just a small company who breached 40, 50, or 100 records, doesn't matter. Or is it Imgur that reached 1.7 billion? What about, you talk about Sony's hack, you talk about Equifax. All those places leaked hundreds of millions of records. At one point, in one particular attack, there was 1.4 billion passwords leaked. Those showed up on the dark web. If you look at the very center of the screen, I've got the top 35 passwords that were part of this breach listed here with a number of people who had that password. 9.2 billion, with a B, billion people used the password in this database of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not very good. And the next thing that happened was 3.1 million used the same password, but they added a 7, 8, 9. I guess that's a little more secure, right, in people's mind. And the chances are most of those people who had 7, 8, 9, they started out with 6, and then they added a 7 because the password expired, and 8, and 9. I'm not sure what to do next, maybe a 0, right? But look through here. The word password was used 1.3 million times. QWERTY? QWERTY is simple. QWERTY is nothing more than the top row of your keyboard from left to right. Use one finger and you type in your password. It's crazy the passwords people are using. This is only the top 35. I warn you that your password is probably listed in the top 100. It's there. If not, I applaud you. You're doing a good job. But Equifax released hundreds of millions of records. Those are listed on dark web. That includes social security numbers, more than just passwords. Imgur was a very popular website that a lot of people use, billions of people. They leaked out 1.7 billion passwords in 2013. The bad part is it took them 4 years to report that to the public and to the government. Do you think that these large companies really care about your security? Probably not. They're worried about profits, shareholder values, reputation. They don't want to release this information, but yet they have to. So you've got to be aware of your password policies to make sure you and your employees are not getting their passwords leaked. And then if they are, to be notified immediately so you can change all your passwords. Passwords are required for all employees and all contractors that utilize your services in your network. Password policy should include things like length of password requirements, any special characters required, if they can contain such as your username. They may not contain dictionary words. It should also include your protection standards, meaning that it should tell people that they never give their password out over the phone. You don't share your password, remember your underpants, even with your boss. That's just wrong. Don't use the remember password feature of websites and software. If someone wants to sit down in front of your computer and you have that feature set, all they got to do is click on one icon and they're into your programs, into your websites, into your email. And with email, they can get anything they want. Because if I go to your bank or any other website and I forget the password, what do? They send an email to you to click on it to reset the password. It's very simple to do. Don't write down your passwords. It happens all the time. When I go to companies and I'm looking at their computers or doing a security assessment, I find the passwords written down under their keyboards, the back of their monitors, under their mouse pad, wherever it happens to be. Don't do it. Your password policy for your employees has to include all that information. It should also include the penalties for violation. Those penalties have to include up to termination of employment. If your employees don't think that you're taking it seriously and that you are willing to stand behind your policy and understand what it means if you don't follow it, then they're not going to follow it either. They are not going to take it seriously. It has to be in the policy that if you don't do it right, after you get a warning, you're going to terminate your employment. That is a serious offense. Relay that to your staff. I've included for your option to download a copy of a password policy for your employees to sign. I recommend that you have every employee read it, sign it, customize it for your company, read it, make sure it's accurate, run it by your legal compliance team, whatever you have to do. But make sure you sign it, put it in the personnel record, and have them re-sign it every year in case something changes. That way, if something does happen, you have justification to terminate the employee without any kind of concern. There's multiple ways to enforce password policies on your network. The easiest way to do it is your group policies. If you have a Windows 2008, 2012, 2016, or any new version of server that's coming out, most of those will always have an Active Directory. Active Directory is a centralized location, repository of all your security standards and practices that enforce it on computers on the network. So if you have a policy that has to have 8 characters, special characters, it cannot be reused so many times, then the employees have no choice but to follow it because your server is going to push out a group policy to enforce that. They can't change it on their own computers without matching the policy. If they try to, a warning pops up, tells them that their password they chose does not meet the corporate security guidelines, and it makes them change it again until it meets your guidelines. That's the easiest way to do this, is to enforce it with a Windows server using Active Directory. I've included a step-by-step procedure for this in the supporting documentation that's attached in the portal. Download it and follow along. There's also, if you don't have an Active Directory, you may have standalone computers. Not the best way, the most secure way to do it in my opinion, but it's becoming more popular than it used to be because a lot of people are utilizing cloud services. With cloud services, your local computers don't have to communicate locally on servers. They just need a way to get to the internet to get to the cloud. They then can utilize resources in the cloud without having to access local files, so they may not have an Active Directory server. If you look here next to the arrow, this local user is an administrator. We want to make sure that permissions are kept to a minimum. It means if this user does not need to be an administrator, do not make them a local administrator. Because if they are logged in as administrator and they get a virus or malware or ransomware, since they are logged in with the right credentials, those programs can automatically install and cause issues. I also want to say if you don't have Active Directory, you want to create a secondary user account on all your computers. Because the worst thing can happen to you as a business owner is someone leaves the company, they have all your company files securely locked on their computer, they take their password and leave, they don't give it to you. Good luck with that. You're going to call somebody in and try to hack that password. What I recommend you do is create a second account. Next to the arrow, you'll see that I've created an additional account that has full permission, full administrative permission to this computer. I don't tell anybody that password. That way, if I want to change that user's password or lock them out or change it once they leave, I have my own account that I can change it from. The next way to do it that we have talked about is a password management application. A password management application is an application that stores all your passwords for all your websites, all your applications, all your programs, everything. It allows you to use more complex passwords with random numbers and characters that no one's ever going to hack or remember. And you put them all in this repository of passwords. And then you have just one secure password to remember to the password vault. Once you have all your passwords stored and you go to a website, what happens is you type in the password for the security management program, the password manager, and it then inputs it into that field for you. You don't even have to memorize or know what the password is for those databases or for those programs. The password management application does it for you. People tell me, oh, wait a minute, Mark. Isn't that like putting all my eggs in one basket? You know, it kind of is. But I figure I'm much better off with one very big secure basket that has all my encrypted passwords in it, that I got to remember one complex password, just one. I'm much better off than trying to memorize a bunch of passwords, writing them down, or using the same password over and over and over. Because if you have passwords in more than one website, sharing one password, if people get access to one password off the dark web or something, or off a data breach, or maybe some ransomware on your computer, they're immediately going to try it all across all the common websites, all the common email clients to see if they can then get into more information. So don't do that. It's much better to have one secure basket than it is to have a bunch of loose eggs. Believe me, trust me on that. I've included a list here of several password management applications with editors' ratings. I encourage you to do your own research. Find out one that fits your budget and your requirements. They're all a little different, and then implement it system-wide for all your clients, all your employees. If you need assistance with that, please reach out to us and we can help you. The next thing that we want to talk about, and you can follow along. If I'm moving too quickly, you can always go back, record this and go back. Or you can always follow along in the supporting documentation. I've included all this in the supporting documentation with more detail than there is here. Most of it has a step-by-step procedure of how to implement this. A second factor authentication is nothing more than a secure way to get something that you have to have in your possession other than a password. If someone was to steal your password, all they would have to do is know the password, log into a website, log into the program, type your password, and move on, and they've got full access as though they are you. Not the best way to do things, in my opinion. A second factor is something that sends either a text message or a temporary password to an application, or maybe to an RSA key. The most secure way to do it is to an RSA key or to an application, because if they send it to a text message, an SMS can be hacked as well pretty easily, so the most secure way is an application. So an example would be, I go to log into my accounting software. When I go to log in, it asks me for my username and my password, and I type that in. It immediately asks me for a second factor. I have to launch the application on my phone. It gives me a new code every 30 seconds, random code. I then grab that code, type it into the screen. It then lets me in that application. If I was to exit the application and go back in, it's going to require a new code. So if someone has your password for your website or your social media site, they can't get in without that second factor, which is on your smartphone or on an RSA key. If you have more questions about that, post them on the Facebook group and we'll answer them for you. I've included 4 options here that I like to use, and you're welcome to investigate these, do your own research, and pick one that works for you. The last thing about passwords that I want to talk about is the dark web. This is a very, very big topic. I don't have time in this course to talk about the dark web in detail. It's so much. But really what it is, the dark web, if you look at this iceberg picture, the part that's above the waterline is the part you use for Google, your mail, your web surfing, your Facebook. All that is above the line. It's a very small part of the web, of the internet. The next section down is kind of hidden from you. You can still get there. It's for academic databases, military information, medical records, scientific data. It's all kinds of information that people use that's not commonly available on the public web, but it's accessible pretty easily. And then you go deeper and deeper and deeper, and you get down to this very, very dark part of the web. And that part of the web is the dark web. That's where criminals and foreign governments hang out. So a lot of foreign governments out there, including ours actually, that does a lot of hacking and cyber sniffing. And the thing about the United States is we do a lot of similar things, I believe, but we don't sell it, and we don't put it on the dark web. We probably use it for our own military defense. But there's other countries out there that when they steal this data, they list it on the dark web for sale. And you can buy anything from passwords, usernames, passwords for $4 or $5. You can buy, social security numbers, identities, all that. and that's available. It's not easy to get to. I recommend you don't try to search for it, because if you do, you might put a target, on you, and the government might want to know kind of why you're surfing the dark web, because there's nothing good out there to buy. It's all illegal content. We can do it for you to find out if your company's information is out there. So what is it? Like I said, it's just a dark part of the web that people sell anything stolen, like credentials, drugs, narcotics, passwords, usernames, identities, credit card numbers, bank account information. Anything that happens on the dark, that happens bad on the internet, most likely happens on the dark web. It's typically run by criminals. So what's out there on the dark web? Well, I can tell you there's a lot more than just usernames and passwords. An example, when Sony got hacked and Target got hacked, there was, a couple million credit card numbers released on the dark web. At that time, the value of a credit card dropped substantially because there was an overabundance of credit card information listed out there on the dark web. It's kind of a supply and demand type economy, just like anything else. And also, they're getting smart. The dark web people who run these, if I want to buy a stolen identity from somebody, let's just say I have their name, their address, their social security number, their mother's maiden name, their pet's name, street they grew up on, all the stuff it takes to fill out a credit app. If that person has an 850 credit score, I'm going to pay a lot more money than I would if that person had an 800 or even a 600. The dark web people who are manning these databases have gotten smart lately, and they're doing credit background checks on everybody who's on the dark web to see what the credit scores are. Well, what that does, it allows me to get a premium price for my identity than I do a bad. Think about it. If I was to buy a stolen identity, I'm a crook, and I want to use it to get credit to buy a house or something, I want somebody with an 850 or an 840, so I'm more likely to get that approved. Good credit is good. But if I was to buy an identity randomly and I got somebody with, say, a 600, I'm probably not going to get approved for that credit anyways, so I invested that money in a stolen credential that's not even going to work for me. So it's not just a random bunch of, stupid people who sell credentials. These are smart people. It's a full-fledged business. People do it full time. They make millions of dollars doing it, and they sell credentials and passwords and identities on the dark web. They also sell things like medical information, your insurance, medical insurance information, your Medicare and Medicaid information. People can actually get operations somehow and charge it to your Medicare, your Medicaid, or your health insurance, and you may never know it. We can run a credit check on ourselves, and we can find out if someone has new credit in our name. In fact, NCS, we sell credit monitoring and dark web monitoring services that you can sell to you, or you can provide to your employees and your staff to make sure that they don't become a victim of cyber breach. Because when the individual is hacked, you become hacked as well. Trust me on that. But basically what happens is we can check our credit reports and find out. But we can't go to Equifax or Experian or whatever and find out if our health insurance card has been used. We wonder why our credit goes up, our health insurance costs go up every year. But what we don't know is it might have gone up because somebody had a fictitious surgery under our name and it got charged to our insurance plan. I've heard of people actually getting their blood types changed on their health insurance and health records because someone else went in to get a surgery and they changed the blood type and updated the records at that time, and it could have potentially caused their life, a loss of life if they get the wrong type of blood. So you got to be careful. We monitor things like our kids' social security numbers, our email addresses, our social security numbers, our health insurance information, our health insurance number, our Medicaid, Medicare. We even monitor if sexual predators move into our neighborhood or our town. We monitor, everything you can think of, change of address cards that people can use with the U.S. Postal Service to do bank fraud and tax fraud. All that's available. Talk to me about it. Comment below or comment in the Facebook group, and I'll reach out to you and we'll talk about it. It doesn't cost much. It's a good peace of mind to protect yourself. But anyways, what's available on the dark web here for this example? Well, look here. I've used Gmail as an example. If you can't see this picture, snapshot it on your phone, zoom into it later and see what I'm talking about. But I could put your domain name in here, your email address, and find out about you or your staff. This shows the email address. The data was found The password, even if it's encrypted, we probably can get the password really easily. It shows where it came from. Typically shows what website it came from. But also, if you look out to the far right, it shows PII hit. That's personal identifiable information. Now, we have hundreds of fields on the dark web available to us. We're only showing you about 10 here. We have access to a lot more than that. So if you want to know more, get with me and we'll get more information. But the PII information is the critical piece here. First of all, if I have your email address and your password, there's a good chance I can use that same password or a variation of that password to get into your social media pages, your additional email account, your Yahoo account, your Gmail account, possibly even your work account or your work VPN. People are creatures of habit, and they typically use the same or similar passwords on multiple sites all the time. It's good to know this. I'll monitor this for you. Reach out to me and I'll do it for you. What PII information is out there? Well, in this particular person, we got the first name, the last name, the address, zip code, phone number, credit card type, credit card expiration year, the credit card bank number, the ID number, and the bank name. You don't think that criminals can make fake credit cards with that information? I mean, the only thing they don't have is the expiration month. How many times do you have to do it? 12 tries and you got it right? You need to be aware of what's happening. We can help you with this. Over the next 6 days, we're going to talk about a lot of cybersecurity, but this one here is very important. I started day one because you have to protect yourself and monitor your own credit history and your own credit monitoring and the dark web for your information. If not, it's going to be sold very cheaply and someone's going to have your identity. So stay tuned. Today, I want to do a quick review. We cover password policies, group policies, multi-factor authentication, password management applications. We went into administrative access for local computers without Active Directory, and we covered the dark web in pretty much detail. So tomorrow is a whole new day. We're going to talk about program updates and why they are important to your network and why you have to make sure they are done correctly. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you tomorrow on day 2. Look for your email for the invitation to day 2.